Digital transformation. We talk about it pretty much every day, right? All kinds of articles on it and every different facet of digital transformation. Brian Salas is here with us. Brian's an analyst and speaker. And Brian, we've talked about digital transformation here before. And I think one of the biggest things that people are concerned with when they're thinking about moving through a transformation with their company is just the number of hurdles. It's hard to even envision how you get over all of these different stumbling blocks. So just talk a little bit about some of the biggest challenges that companies face.
Well, there are many, and a lot of it. Like if I could just be really honest with you, there digital transformation means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. I've been covering it for the better part of a decade now, and originally digital transformation, well, and actually still today, digital transformation really was about migrating to the cloud and modernizing a lot of business infrastructure to essentially allow companies or organizations to be more agile and scalable as new technologies come and go. Uh, but I think that in of itself was limiting. It was an initial hurdle because it didn't necessarily give digital transformation a sense of purpose. It just gave it a sense of a roadmap, essentially, of technologies to adopt and test and scale. But I'll tell you that more often than not, one of the biggest challenges I hear are two things. One is legacy infrastructure is really difficult to update and upgrade. A lot of these systems are so old but so integrated into the organization that trying to update those like with a rip and replace is essentially going to cause or wreak havoc, and that's what a lot of companies are worried about. So they're trying to take it a little bit slowly, a little bit more strategically. The other one is mindset. uh, this one it comes up in pretty much all of the cases of digital transformation, and by that I mean what is possible with digital transformation if your perspective is rooted still not only in legacy systems but also legacy ideals of what technology can do for the organization, what the market looks like, how an organization should run, what are operational models to support tech, and so on. So these two things are the most common that I see in my research.
And don't you feel like, Brian, or do you, I should say, that when it comes to companies and their mindset that you talk about here, with millennials so much into the workforce now, and this is what they've come to expect because it's all that they've known, especially Gen Z as they're coming up. So do companies really even have a choice anymore? I mean, their mindset needs to be, we've got to set our sights on being more digitally focused.
You couldn't be more right. In fact, one of the challenges when I study things like innovation that I hear about is that culture is actually one of the biggest inhibitors of all things, all progress. And sometimes when I when I interview executives around culture, innovation, or digital transformation, I sometimes feel like I'm not an analyst, that I'm a therapist, because they start. A lot of executives actually want to share their frustrations, and one of the frustrations, especially with more, uh, let's just say, legacy-oriented organizations, I'll hear about millennials all the time, and then also the coming of centennials, in that they do want to work differently, they do think differently, and infrastructures and also models don't necessarily support that way of thinking and way of working. But it is, because the consumerization of technology it hasn't just affected millennials or the younger workforce. It's affected all of us. I think basically anybody who has a smartphone or uses social media or has ordered an Uber or Lyft or DoorDash or Postmates, you name it, we have, as human beings, radically transformed. Our brains have radically transformed as we use more of these technologies. We're multitasking. We're doing a million things. Employees get something like 200 notifications during their work day, just from their phone and social and email. And so a lot of the way that we have to think about work has to change. So we have to think bigger than the millennial workforce. We have to give technology that sense of purpose of how should people work. And that means that we have to spend more time looking within the organization beyond assessments and audits and 360 reviews to get a better sense of how they want to work, and then how we could bring the workforce not just into a modern era, but modernizing the definition of work itself.
Yeah, most definitely. And I know you just got back from Dreamforce, and of course that is one of the big concepts that people are just talking about a nonstop. There, Brian, is digital transformation. So, what were some of the things that you were hearing, and some of the things that people are talking about as we're heading into 2020?
Salesforce was a big champion of the modernization of the overall business, the overall enterprise. So all of their products, all of their announcements were really looking at not just modernizing groups, but also bringing groups together. So truth was a real big pillar at Dreamforce. And truth was looking at, for example, the customer truth. Who is the customer throughout the journey, not just in any one fragment of that journey. And voice and AI were also big topics at the event, and really trying to help IT but also business executives think differently about, not just obviously, integrating Salesforce into the organization, but rethinking, kind of like what we were talking about, rethinking the opportunity for business modernization as a whole. So that's really what this is about. And, in fact, if I could just share with you a quick definition of digital transformation, in my research, I'm trying to help modernize this for people, which is uh, the evolving pursuit of innovative and agile business and operational models, fueled by evolving technologies, processes, analytics, and talent to create new value for customers, employees, and stakeholders. And I think, if you pause and play that back as you're watching this, that that's really not just Dreamforce, but or Salesforce as an organization. That's how every, I think, executive, whether you're an IT or you're a CXO, CEO, or especially if you're a board or shareholder, we have to push businesses beyond just the topic of digital transformation. We have to really look at this as business modernization. We're competing against digital natives. We're competing against digital disruption, and that takes not just new technology or infrastructure, but a new mindset as well.
Yeah, and I think that's actually a really great definition there, Brian. And certainly there's so many balls in the air, and I think that's what makes this so confusing. Is there are so many different parts and things to consider. And when you talk about just a business and a company size, you have from a huge enterprise down to these small companies, small businesses in particular. It seems really face an uphill battle when it comes to making these kind of changes. Do you find that?
When we really start looking at the bigger picture, what we're really talking about is change management, and that's not the sexiest of conversations to have. And the topic of change management in of itself is probably in need of change management, because it's so big and it's so daunting. But honestly, I think the greatest stories I've ever seen. If you have, if you're watching this, yeah, I published a paper a couple of years ago called "The Six Stages of Digital Transformation," and as you look at the more progressive organizations where innovation and agility become sort of the norm. Essentially, what we're watching is these cross-functional segments coming together, at least early on, as a stakeholder group, as a steering committee, if you will, because if you look at customer experience, that tends to be the number one unifier within the organization with giving digital transformation a purpose. For example, if we could look at the customer journey, we can see exactly how mobile and social and the app economy and all of these different things are sort of coming into the picture, and we can see what's broken. And you can point digital transformation, or at least the modernization of technology, right at things that are going to have immediate ROI, so that we could attach some meaningful metrics to at least early digital transformation initiatives, so that while you're migrating things to the cloud, while you're doing bigger, more infrastructure focused investments, we can also look at other investments across the journey, across functions that are going to have immediate payoffs and that are actually smaller in their efforts.
Brian, of course, when you could talk for hours, no doubt, on digital transformation, and there's so many conversations that we could have around digital transformation. And one reason, obviously, we like to have these conversations with you, as there's so many different facets of it. So we appreciate your time on this today, and certainly much more to cover on it, which we will definitely do. And if you'd like to learn more about digital transformation, make sure you check out Tech Republic and ZDNet. Thanks for watching.